Okay. Wait. Yeah. Okay.
Or for the next page, we just say next.
Yeah, I will watch it.
Oke, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu, kita akan mulai lagi. Oke, Bapak Ibu, kita akan mulai ya sesi kedua ini. Ini macam besar ya. Khususnya ya. The world building structure yang very
Kamera. Video.
So the workshop day today is very much focused on this topic. Prepare some things for you, and I have a couple of USB sticks. And everybody who likes to join tomorrow will find software and also data on these USB sticks. And I just distribute them, and you just copy to your computer. You can also keep them until tomorrow if you like, but just bring them back tomorrow. Yeah? I think we have only 8. Yeah. So I just throw them up. No, maybe you just pass them around.
Yes. Jadi kopikan saja datanya ya. Sekarang boleh ya. Atau kalau mau dibawa dulu besok terus balikan. Ya. Kalau sampai hilang nanti kena penalti.
And then to add to that, there will also be an option for those online, at least for the first session. So for Google attention, I'll provide a second option in case you are not here to get the data. So yeah, please still join tomorrow.
So the amount of data is quite huge. I think it's 14 gigabytes. 14, I think. I hope you have enough space on your computer. Okay. Mary, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, then I will.
Yeah. Okay, I think now we will have a presentation from Mary, PhD candidate from Biodiversity. Mary will talk in English, Her English is very good, Jadi bahasa Inggris sangat bagus, Pak. Yang umur 5 tahun ini bisa, karena orang Amerika, from USA. So then I will make some translation, slide by slide. Please don't show fast.
And hopefully by the end of my 3-year PhD, I can give a presentation about this. Okay. But for now, I thank all of you for joining me. This session this morning was really excellent. And I even had a chance to kind of make some adjustments and take what we learned in the morning session and already start to adapt that, because what's really important to me is adapting my topic to the needs of the national park, the needs of the consortium, and also to integrate any students who are interested.
Ini Mbak Mary ini akan penelitian untuk PhD-nya tentang pengembangan sistem monitoring permanen di Taman Nasional Rindu untuk biodiversitas dan iklim Sulawesi. Next.
Great. So the title of my presentation today, well, I'll be introducing my PhD. It has the title of Development of a Permanent Monitoring System for Rindu National Park for Biodiversity and Climate Management. And already some pieces of my title you would have heard this morning in the session from Christoph and from Lutz, and also just in general. So hopefully it is in line with what the National Park wishes to get out of this collaboration. And today is my official start day of my PhD. So I'm sure that a lot of changes will happen and a lot of learning will happen as we go. So I'm really excited for that opportunity. And
harapannya topik ini sangat relevan dengan apa yang telah kita diskusikan tadi, Tapi tentunya mungkin masih ada masukan-masukan yang untuk semacam penajaman tentunya. By the way, from the online, this is clear already? Kita cek Mas, nanti cek yang online apakah bisa. Siap. Oke, aman. Bagus Oh,
great. Another fun fact before I get started is that all of these pictures on my title screen are from Rindu, which I got to search and find before ever coming here, and it's just incredible, and I really can't wait to dive deeper into the park. So a little bit about me before I get started. I am originally from Chicago, so as Pastor mentioned, I'm US American, but I'm also half Serbian and Croatian, so I have roots in Europe. And for that reason, I've been moving to Europe and have been living there for the past 3.5 years to do my master's thesis, an internship, and now my PhD at the University of Göttingen. Yes, please.
Mbak Mary dari Chicago katanya, Chicago Amerika S1 juga di sana gitu. Ada semacam mix keturunan dari Kroasia lalu S2 di Göttingen dan memang sekarang terlibat di proyek ini begitu, dan untuk penelitian nanti di luar itu Thanks.
Okay, the majority of my sort of life. Want to put a quick clarifier, the clicker keeps automatically going, so if it's a little bit back and forth with my slides, it's just because it has a mind of its own. So I will manage that. Great. Okay, so the majority of my work as a forester in my master and also in an internship following that has been in Africa. So physically in Africa, in Uganda, but also doing a lot of remote work since I'm a geospatial analyst, also just using satellite data. And so I have a bit more information about that later, just so that you understand a bit more of my sort of expertise, so to say. And now I'm here. This is my first time in Indonesia, my first time in Asia at all, and I really couldn't be happier to be here. The outline of my presentation today is to give some background, both for me and for the department, because I did my master's thesis with the University of Göttingen with the same department. So because we're looking for master students, I think that this is a nice opportunity to show some capabilities of our department in Germany. I will also give some definitions, which we love in our department, and some important concepts when we look at forest resource monitoring. We talked a lot this morning about the study sites and about the project context. So I'll give a few pieces of information, but mostly this won't be a major factor. And then we're going to talk about my topic and the fun ideas that we've played with so far.
Yeah.
All right. So I mentioned that I want to give some background so that you understand what I've done in the past, but also the department. So just a quick highlight. I did my master's thesis with Professor Christoph as my supervisor, with the title of Land Use and Land Cover Change Analysis as a precursor to forest and landscape restoration in northern Cameroon. So this is an African dryland. You can see in the picture to the bottom right, this is what the landscape looks like. Sorry, the auto. Right, so in addition to working with the University of Göttingen, I also was collaborating with the German GIZ, so International Cooperation, many of you might be familiar, with EcoConsult, which is a consulting firm that has many Cameroonian employees that I was working quite closely with, and then a local university. So you can see kind of a theme that we like to work with universities, we like to work with these international collaborations. That's right up our alley. So just to highlight some of the findings that I was able to show with my analysis, this here you can see the picture of the study site, and I mapped the degradation and recovery over a 20-year period. So I was able to detect an 8.5% net degradation over 20 years, 44% cultivated land that was spanning a forest reserve, which is the black inset. Degradation hotspots in the south and east of the reserve, but also some naturally recovered areas. So this was really important for the project that wanted to implement landscape restoration. So these naturally recovered areas could be examined to find out why. Were they abandoned? Were they planted? If they were planted by local members of the community, could that be scaled up to other areas? The way that I did this was a supervised classification and making maps. So that's kind of what we do. So yeah, these are just some highlights.
I think I know something. Ya, ini sebentar ya, pasti belakang ya. Nah, jadi Bang Paperi ini waktu mahasiswa S2-nya, jadi baru beres bulan ini ya, bulan lalu begitu, penelitian tentang perubahan tutupan lahan juga ya di di Kamerun ya, dengan bekerja sama ada proyek di GIZ ya, Eco Consultant. Saya rasa ini sangat inline ya dengan isu kita. Tadi kita bahas masalah tentang perubahan tutupan lahan dalam macam gitu ya, sehingga nampaknya memang ini juga inline dan background yang dia miliki selama ini itu juga bisa support untuk kegiatan di sini ya. Gitu. Nah, oke, next. Nah, dari hasil studinya beberapa yang penting ya, 8,5% itu ada semacam degradasi ya selama 20 tahun perubahan landscape gitu. Nah, ini mungkin menarik kalau kemarin tadi hanya mulai 2019 analisis gitu ya. Biasanya kita bisa flashback ya gitu ya. Nah, 40,38% itu merupakan lahan cultivate ya yang dibudidayakan gitu ya, yang ada di itu forest reserve ya, semacam ini kayak hutan lindung gitu ya, kayak di kita gitu ya. Ternyata di sana kurang sama juga ya, ada semacam aktivitas masyarakat ya. Jadi ada degradasi ya, degradasi di sebelah selatan gitu. Dan 1059 ini masih tertutup sebagai hutan ya, warnanya masih hutan. Nah, ini mungkin perubahannya seperti ini gitu. Yang degradasi yang warna merah gitu ya, dan ternyata ada recovery gitu yang warnanya biru gitu ya, dan tidak ada perubahan gitu yang warnanya putih. Oke, next. Ya, metode yang digunakan ini ada supervised classification. Nah, mungkin nanti ini teman-teman remote sensing ini sudah pada tahu juga begitu ya, tapi besok ini akan juga lebih diperdalam tentang supervised classification ini, klasifikasi tertimbing. Nah, ini tahun 2022 tutupannya seperti ini ya, ada peta sebelah kanan itu ya. 941 hektar hutan ya. Lalu menggunakan data Sentinel resolusi 10 meter ada 13 kelas ya. Lalu sebelumnya 2001 itu ya, klasifikasinya seperti itu gitu ya. Ada 7 kelas menggunakan data landscape ya. Ada 11.500 hektar ya, landscape. Dan hasilnya analisis seperti itu ya. Menunjukkan perubahan-perubahan. Okay.
Thank you so much for the translation. So, yeah, for any students who are interested in doing some kind of work like this, I know that there's definitely the support in our department, and that I will also be a PhD student for the next 3 years, and I know this process quite well. I would be definitely happy to help.
Ya. Jadi analisis seperti ini dipelajari di saat S2 dan akan dilanjutkan saat S3 ini, dan nanti sama kerjasama ini bisa saja nanti Pak Mary ya membantu misalkan meningkatkan capacity building ya untuk data analisis ya.
Okay, I just want to highlight one more piece of my sort of background because I found that it was particularly relevant to the discussions this morning. So directly prior to starting my PhD and coming here, I had an internship with the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. I was providing support on the landscape approach for a project called Stabilizing Land Use. So some of the, especially talking about the landscape approach, I find that this was particularly relevant to some of the wishes of the national park. So the project itself concentrated on improving ecological connectivity, integrating trees into agricultural landscapes, and RED+ implementation. I personally was mapping land cover for 6 landscapes across 4 sub-Saharan African countries. You can see an example of one of the landscapes here in DR Congo. And I also helped to assess project documents for their integration of deliberative democracy in the landscape approach. So this was a completely new experience for me and was really on the policy and social side of these types of projects. So I would say this wish of the national park to engage communities and do this kind of work is at least familiar to me through this internship.
Jadi selain sebagai mahasiswa master, saat mahasiswa master ini Mary juga magang ya, istilahnya ada project dengan IUCN pada kelas semua ya, IUCN di mana di Afrika kan?
Yes.
Ya di Afrika juga ya, nama project Plus seperti itu. Dan tujuannya adalah daerah meningkatkan ya konektivitas secara ekonomi ya, juga pertanian ya, dan konteks landscape dan juga implementasi RED+. Ya. Lalu berhasil memetakan ya tempat lahan untuk 6 landscape ya, 4 sub-Saharan countries, jadi 4 negara Afrika ya. Dan juga bagaimana integrasikan dan pendekatan landscape. Jadi nampaknya memang background-nya Mary ini sangat inline ya, dengan isu-isu di taman nasional kita pada itu ya, yang mana tadi berdasarkan pendekatan landscape gitu ya, ada hutan, ada pertanian dan sebagainya. So jadi dia merasa senang juga ya terlibat dalam proyek ini begitu, dan merasa sangat inline ya, sangat relevan ya, dengan background-nya.
Along those lines, my chef, my boss that I had during this time, his name is Chetan Kumar, and he is, so to say, an expert in the landscape approach. He did his PhD geographically in Indonesia, working with C4, and he has also expressed interest in collaboration. So if that is a route that we want to go, he's definitely interested in getting involved.
Ya, jadi bosnya ya Pak Kumar ya, Dr. Kumar ya, jaga bekerjasama dengan C4 ya, jadi sangat populer dari Indonesia. Begitu mendengar kata Mary pribadi Taman Nasional ini sangat senang juga ya, jadi kedepannya ada semacam peluang-peluang untuk kolaborasi.
Okay, So that's it for my background. And now we're going to jump into my timeline here and what I'm hoping to accomplish over the next 3 years for my PhD. Okay. So as I mentioned, today is the official start date of my PhD. So this is a fantastic way to start. And I've sort of divided my 3 years into how I want to progress with my PhD. I've entitled year 1, which starts now, as learning, year 2 as testing, and year 3 as implementing. So if you remember, my topic is quite broad. So, you know, establishing a permanent monitoring system for the national park. I think that this is a process, and this is the output of year 3. And everything that happens before that is learning from you, working together, and trying out different options, just having fun with it, because I think that's what it should all be about. So to go into a bit more detail about what I plan for each of these activities, year 1 is going to be focusing on integrating with the current national park activities. So we already mentioned that I'll be here for a week longer, and I definitely will also be here as much as it's possible later this year and as soon as possible. And with this time, I really want to just learn from you. What's already in your schedule, what is planned, how can I be involved? I also will, in just a week, start a Bahasa Indonesia course. And yeah, learning, learning this is definitely one of my first objectives, and one that I will try very hard. I also see a lot of potential in revisiting old plots from past research, right? So one component of my thesis is climate. And from our university, through the STORMA project, there are plant biodiversity plots that have been assessed over 10 years ago. And if we go back and we can learn from those plots, that already gives us so much information on changes that have happened in a decade. It also gives us sort of, in this learning phase, tests at data management. You know, how can we assess changes in the future, and what does that look like in terms of data and infrastructure? It is also really important to collaborate with other national parks in Indonesia and globally. So Professor Christoph Klein mentioned in the morning that if we do this right, Lower Lindu can become this internationally renowned park. So I think one important step is to learn from the best of the best that exists now, and then do better. For year 2, I envision that it will be all about testing it out, right? So we've learned, we can have a plan, and let's go into the field and let's try. Yeah, so checking for the practicality and feasibility. It's a very mountainous area in the park. So, you know, being able to make sure that we're not being too ambitious, right? And that we're actually working within the capabilities that we have is very important. And also building capacity of myself and meeting the people who have great knowledge that can be used for this. And then finally, in year 3, let's finalize it, let's do it, and let's establish a great baseline for this permanent system. That's my vision. I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
Jadi ini semacam tata waktu ya dari Mbak Mary selama 3 tahun ya. Tahap pertama belajar gitu ya sebagai orang luar mungkin bagaimana beradaptasi dengan wilayah rindu ini akan berbaur dalam aktivitas wilayah rindu, belajar bahasa ya, misalnya memang nanti setelah dari sini akan ke Bogor ya belajar bahasa di sana. Nanti ada kunjungan-kunjungan lagi ya bagaimana misalkan kelompok yang sebelumnya mungkin sudah ada di wilayah rindu ya. Lalu juga berkolaborasi dengan national park ya, yang lain di Indonesia dan secara global. Pada tahun kedua nanti ada tahap kemudian ini akan dikembangkan beberapa mungkin rancangan ya, rancangan sampling tentang pengukuran di lapangan ya, cek bagaimana kapasitasnya seperti apa ya, lalu kelayakannya seperti apa gitu ya, dan ada tahap capacity building ya gitu. Lalu tahun ketiga itu tahap implementasi ya, jadi bagaimana finalisasikan rancangan ya, yang sudah desain gitu, lalu melakukan inventarisasi hutan, punya pengumpulan data lapangan, karena selain GIS dengan data remote apa ya. Dan juga mengcover semacam baseline ya, baseline awal seperti apa. It's only 3 years. So, yeah. Do you graduate in 3 years or not?
Yes, 3 years.
Oke. Jadi harapannya harus 3 tahun juga.
Are you gonna hold me to that if I say yes? Okay, great. So, yep, going back to my outline, now we're going to sort of transition into some background information. So some definitions and some concepts that feed into the design that I will show at the later stage. So what is forest resource monitoring? This is really the core of what I'll be trying to accomplish in the next 3 years. So I'm taking the definition of FAO from the National Forest Inventory, because I think that it fits quite well here. So, sorry about the clicker. Forest resource monitoring is the systematic collection, analysis, dissemination of forest-related data, and the derivation of information and knowledge at regular intervals to allow the detection of changes over time. Quite a lot. There are 3 main components that we like to consider when we try to plan a forest resource monitoring assessment. Mainly, we have you can go through it. Okay, so we have, you can do 3 times. We have sampling design, plot design, and estimation design. These are the 3 components. I can go 3 more times. So I like to think, yeah. Okay, great. So I like to think of sampling design, plot design, and estimation design as answering the questions of where do we go in the forest? What do we do when we get there? And what does this information tell us about the forest as a whole?
Ya, ini Mbak Mary memberikan beberapa informasi dasar, pertama tentang forest monitoring, ya, monitoring perubahan budaya hutan, gitu. Ya, ini definisinya dari FAO yang bisa kita lihat adalah pengumpulan, ya, analisis dan diseminasi secara sistematik, ya, data-data terkait hutan, ya, yang diperoleh secara reguler bisa per tahun, 2 tahun, ya, atau 5 tahun misalkan, ya, yang memungkinkan kita melakukan deteksi, ya, perubahan, ya, menurut waktu. Nah, ini juga relevan dengan tadi yang disampaikan, ada keinginan di wilayah ini bagaimana perubahan kehidupan lahannya, ya. Nah, 3 komponen utama adalah rancangan samplingnya. Di sini untuk memberi guidance kepada kita harus kemana nih kalau mengukur, gitu ya, di mana, gitu kan. Jadi harus dirancang dari awal, lalu ada plot design, ya, desain plotnya seperti apa, ukurannya, ya, bentuknya nanti di lapangan, ya, sehingga yang kita ukur di lapangan itu, ya, sudah jelas, ya, di mana kita melakukan pengukuran. Lalu ada rancangan penugaan, ya, ini untuk mengatakan karena kita dari plot, gitu ya, dan sementara areanya luas, ya, bagaimana kita mengatakan untuk keseluruhan populasinya, ya, kalau misalkan tertarik kepada misalkan kayu, ya, hanya dari beberapa plot, atau bagaimana keseluruhannya. Nah, ini 3 komponen ini jadi komponen daripada monitoring budaya hutan. Oke.
Okay, so for those of you for those of you who joined for Professor Christopher's presentation from the other day, you might have remembered that he said there's no one-size-fits-all for forest resource monitoring. This is definitely the case for this PhD and for our consortium. So what I've been focusing on so far in the proposal was climate and biodiversity. And when we look at these 2 elements, it's very subtle, the differences that we have to consider, but very important. So when we think about things like climate, what we really need from a forest resource assessment is precise estimates of climate variables, of biomass, carbon stocks, all of these things. We also need repeated observation over long periods of time. On the other hand, with biodiversity, it's a little bit different. So in this case, we really want to cover a wide range of environmental factors. So as many forest types as there are, as many zonations, different elevations, soil types, all of that. Because these different elements can have an impact on the species distribution. It's also important to adapt to species hyperdominance, which I will talk about in the next slide after translation.
Nah, ini dua hal yang dipertimbangkan ya dalam budaya sumber daya hutan ya, di konteks ini yang jadi perhatian nanti adalah climate ya, iklim dan biodiversitas. Nah, dalam konteks iklim biasanya kita tertarik kepada dugaan-dugaan secara precise, teliti ya daripada perubahan iklim ya, biomasa, carbon stock gitu ya. Dalam konteks retas kita depan dan memang ini perlu melakukan pengamatan yang berulang ya, gitu untuk tahu perubahannya. Nah, untuk biodiversitas itu tentunya sangat luas ya. Biodiversitas itu coverage-nya dari faktor-faktor lingkungan, misalkan hutan, ya, elevasi, tanam, ya. Dan juga bagaimana spesies-spesies yang hyperdominan ya. Nanti akan dijelaskan seperti hyperdominant species.
Okay, so species hyperdominance is a phenomenon that we see in a lot of tropical rainforests. And this is the effect that we see that high tropical forest species diversity is largely due to the large number of very rare species. We can see this in a graph, which I have here, when we graph the species rank in abundance, so most abundance to the left, and then we plot that against the cumulative percentage of individuals, which is how many individuals are from that particular species. When we graph that out here, this is an example from Uganda, but we also see this in Central America and throughout the tropics, that in this case, 10 species from this forest inventory made up more than 50% of the total individuals. So just 10 species were found at the probability of finding these 10 individuals in a plot anywhere in the forest was very high. On the other hand, the rarest half of all species made up less than 7% of the total individuals. So there are two important conclusions that we can get from this. First, that tropical biodiversity is very fragile and it is very impacted by rare species. And so removing these special environments where they might be a part of could basically eliminate them forever. The next thing that we can learn and take away for our forest resource monitoring is that we need large sample sizes of very different environments to capture these rare species.
Nah, ini kaitannya dengan hyperdominant spesies di tropical forest ya. Ada contoh dari Uganda ya, bahwa 10% spesies itu sudah 50% dari total individu ya. Tapi ternyata ya yang jarang ya itu 70%-nya dari total individu ya. Nah, sehingga memang dalam hutan tropis ini keanekaragaman tinggi itu justru banyak disebabkan karena apa? Kalau banyak memang yang jenis-jenis yang langka. Ya, karena kelangkaan jenisnya itu, walaupun mungkin hanya sedikit-sedikit kan dari segi jumlah gitu ya. Nah, sehingga memang di sini hutan tropis itu cukup fragile, kita rentan ya ini. Nah, kaitannya dengan monitoring sumber daya hutan, memang di sini pasti memerlukan yang jumlah sampel ya, plot katakanlah yang lebih banyak ya untuk bisa bagaimana meng-capture ya spesies yang langka. Ya, karena mungkin tersebar gitu ya. Tapi jumlahnya sedikit-sedikit. Nah, ini suatu tantangan juga ini, large sample size ya, untuk monitoring di hutan tropis ya. Nah, mungkin di konteks LNNP juga, National Park ya, melalui itu saya rasa mungkin tidak relevan. Ya.
Okay, so that's it with the background knowledge and the concept. So congratulations, we made it through. This section is on the study site overview and the project context. I think we largely covered this information in the morning, so I think that we can skip much of it unless if anybody would just like a general overview of the park and a quick refresher on the project, but I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that. I could just go fast. Okay, so here's Lorelei National Park. It's a nice map from a publication from 2004 that shows just how mountainous this area is. So Lorelei sits right below the equator at 1 degree south, and I think it's 120 degrees east. It is the largest montane forest protected area in Sulawesi, and it is very mountainous, rising to a peak of 2,525 meters. Also, I want to put a clarifier. All of the information that I'm presenting now in the park is what I've gathered from Germany. So if anything that I say sounds a bit off or anything like that, please correct me. It's day one, so that's what I'm here for.
Ya, ini informasi yang Mbak Mary peroleh ya dari pustaka gitu ya sebelum datang ke sini gitu tentang lalu lintas ini. Ini publikasi tampaknya zamannya Storma ya 2004 ini ya Storma Project ya dari saat ya project yang memahami ya yang memang ini sangat pegunungan gitu ya dan ada di bawahnya ekuator di sini dan cukup luas dari segi area ya gitu. Mungkin sampai ke atas terus ya. Yesterday we still in the lower part. That we have to hike. Okay.
There's the next difference, yeah. 3 more clicks. Okay, so some highlights of the history that I've learned from my reading on Lorelei National Park is that there's really fascinating prehistory, right? So we have these megaliths scattered throughout the park that show us that for thousands of years, people have been here and people have been part of the forest. When the park was established in 1999, it largely had the goal to conserve fauna diversity. But what we can see from the discussion today is that the current developments are to work alongside the communities. So now there's a much more holistic approach.
Ya ini menemukan fakta ya katanya Taman Nasional ini sudah sejak zaman dulu kala ya ini yang megalit kemarin kita belum sampai sana jauh. At least today we have to reach there. Ya. Didirikan 99 untuk konservasi biodiversitas fauna ya. Lalu sekarang pendekatannya tadi ya kerjasama kolaborasi dengan komunitas ya. Oke.
Okay, great. Lorelei National Park also has incredible biodiversity.
Siapa itu?
Very cute.
Tarsius ya? Ya. Tarsius. Spesies ya. Pak Ocitsan.
Okay, yeah, great. So there's really incredible biodiversity here on the flora side and on the fauna side. So there's over 200 bird species, over 70 mammal species, 24 reptiles, and 21 amphibians. And many of these species are not found anywhere else in the world. On the flora side, there are over 5,000 species, but still many more to discover. We know already that elevation is an important factor for species distribution, and that there's still much to learn.
Ya ini beberapa fakta ya, ada berbagai jenis burung ya, lalu ada mammal ya, lalu reptil, ya, amfibi, ya, lalu polar lebih dari 5.000 spesies, dan juga ini memang elevasinya kan gradual ya, bervariasi, dan ini faktor yang penting ya, para spesies yang masalah elevasi. Lalu masih tidak banyak terganggu.
Okay, and throughout the research that I've done thus far, I found some important highlights of different research phases and project phases that have taken place in the park. I would love if this information can be filled in, because I'm sure that this is a very limited list. And yeah, so I would just love to learn more about what has gone on, what's currently going on. But yeah, so just to bring up some of these, the exploration of the Saracen brothers dates back to the 18 and 1900s. And this, from my understanding, was one of the first times that there was a record of some of the species in the park, written record. Of course, we have the paleontological and archaeological studies related to the megaliths. And this one is really interesting. So I found a 25-year management plan from the Nature Conservancy, which is an international NGO, that, if it is successful, would technically still be in effect today. 25-year management plan. It was made in 1999 at the establishment of the park. So I would also love to hear about where this project went. Did it continue? Why did it stop if it stopped? What happened? I think since we are trying to make a permanent system, a long-term system, it's really important to understand what might have failed in the past for such ambitious projects so that we don't do the same. We also have the Storma project, which was the first collaboration with the University of Göttingen and Northern National Park. I'm not so clear on when it ended, but 2010. I can go with it now. And then at our last meeting, which was still online, I learned about the ePass project, which just ended recently. So this is what I have, but please, over the next week and the next years, fill in my information.
Ya, ini Mbak Mary merupakan beberapa ya proyek di area Taman Nasional ini ya. Ternyata sejak 1800-an itu sudah ada eksplorasi dari Saracen dan dua Saracen brothers.
They were two Swiss brothers who were working with the Dutch.
Oh, ya. Belum ada kolonial ya.
Also quite controversial.
Ya, ada Saracen bersaudara ya. Kalau dulu ada Padang, ada eksplorasi luar Padang. Dan studi arkeologi dulu ya. Lalu tahun 2025 ada macam management plan ya, 25 tahun untuk kawasan konservasi di sini ya. Dan di sini data-data sifatnya periodik monitoring itu sangat diperlukan ya untuk membuat management plan. Lalu memang saya tahu juga Storma itu dulu ya 2010 ya Pak ya, dia sama dengan Göttingen gitu ya, lebih kepada orientasi riset saat itu gitu. Lalu 2015 sampai 2020 ini ada EPAS ya, EPAS project ya. Lalu just finish. Oke. Baru 2022 ya, Karang Consortium project. Oke.
Okay, and you can click. Yeah, so now we are at course program 3, which we've already heard quite a lot about today. Yeah, so just to send a reminder that my project fits within this. And we are part of output 4, so increasing cooperation with relevant parties at program locations.
Nah, jadi sekarang memang ada program 3 ya, ini dengan tujuannya adalah untuk mendukung konservasi biodiversitas dan rehabilitasi das ya. Nah, memang ada 3 output istilahnya ya, 3 bagian lah gitu ya di sini. Output 1 lebih kepada pengolahan taman nasionalnya, ya, lalu kedua rehabilitasi ya area degradasi ya di watershed, lalu ketiga kaitannya dengan peningkatan kesejahteraan masyarakat sekitar oleh lindu ya. Nah, yang keempat ini yang kita ini ya konsumsi penelitian, memang tujuan untuk apa? Meningkatkan kerjasama ya antara pihak ini kaitannya dengan riset ya pendidikan ya.
More, yeah. Okay. Great. And now here we are. This is our project. I think most of what is up here you've heard plenty of times today. So I think we can just go to the next, please. Hey, so we're at my PhD. Okay, so the objective of my PhD, we're there, is to develop a permanent monitoring system. So remember, sampling design, plot design, estimation design for biodiversity and climate.
Ya,
So there are some logistical constraints that I'm working under, but also a lot of great opportunities. So in terms of constraints, I think please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's limited accessibility of the forest area, especially in the core zone. Species identification might be difficult. I've heard this from a past researcher from my university who worked for several years in the park. And also a modest budget for long-term observation plots. Hopefully next time we get more than 3%. There are also a lot of opportunities. So building off of current and past research, orienting to the National Park existing system and learning from successful cases around the world.
Ya, ini PSD S3 Mbak Mary ini lebih fokus pada mengembangkan sistem monitoring secara permanen, ya. Sistem yang baku dalam konteks bagaimana rancangan sampling-nya, ya, bagaimana rancangan plotnya, ya. Lalu juga rancangan dugaannya yang dijelaskan pada tadi, ya, 3 komponen forest monitoring untuk pengolahan biodiversitas dan iklim, ya, di luar itu. Nah, memang ada beberapa kendala yang sudah teridentifikasi. Pertama, ya, keterbatasan mungkin akses, ya, terhadap area hutan, ya, susah juga menjangkau sampai yang tengah-tengah, ya, kita baru pinggir-pinggir. Lalu sudah pasti ini banyak spesies, ya, mungkin identifikasi juga sulit, ya. Tapi kalau Taman Nasional sudah punya database yang bagus, saya rasa mungkin bisa diantisipasi. Juga dari segi budget, ya, tidak terlalu besar juga, gitu, ya. Apalagi kalau harus untuk long term, ya, pengamatan jangka panjang. Karena pasti perlu budget yang banyak, ya, tapi nanti mungkin ada kesempatan ini kan bagaimana yang sekarang yang sudah bisa diintegrasikan dengan orang Taman Nasional, ya. Lalu juga banyak contoh kasus, ya, di negara lain, gitu, ya, bagaimana pengelolaan Taman Nasional, ya, yang mungkin nanti bisa semacam diadaptasi, gitu, ya, dikomparasi dengan di luar itu. Ya.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead and click an article up there. And one more? Okay, perfect. So, thus far, I've done a little bit of brainstorming on how I could envision the 3 components of forest resource monitoring looking like for my PhD. I got a bit creative with it and had fun with it. So, I'm happy to hear your thoughts. And yeah, let's start. So I'll describe each of these in more detail in the next slides. But to give an overview, you're going to see a 3-part system for sampling design, where we look at the past, we look at the present, and we prepare for the future and look at the future. For the plot design, it's really important to have a base design. So, you know, the sort of standard elements. And because there are so many interests from the national park and from the consortium, it's important that we can add new components based on those needs, based on changing needs, based on international partnerships. So more about that later. And because particularly the sampling design is complicated, the estimation design will be in 2 parts. So there will be sort of a separate estimation for climate and forest stock, biomass, things like this. The sort of traditional forest inventory metrics, and then a separate data management for biodiversity, right? Because biodiversity, when we want to know the total number of species, for example, that species might have fallen outside of that particular plot. But if we notice that it's a new species, we still want the capability to record that species, identify that species, and have this in a separate sort of data management system.
Nah, ini penjelasan lebih detail tadi tentang apa namanya sistem permanen apanya, ya, yang akan dikembangkan. Pertama dari segi rancangan samplingnya, ini ada 3 bagian sistem, ya, bagaimana melihat nanti yang sudah, gitu, ya, yang sekarang maupun yang ke depannya. Lalu dari plot design ini nantinya harus ada semacam base design, standar design, ya. Di beberapa taman nasional kita bisa lihat juga berkomparasi, ya. Nanti kalau ada semacam tambahan-tambahan komponen, ya, itu bisa ditambahkan, ya, berdasarkan kebutuhan lokal di luar itu, ya, dan juga mungkin kerjasama dengan nasional yang lain, yang perlu data apa, mungkin perlu ditambahkan plot design. Lalu kaitan dengan rancangan pendugaannya, ya, 2 fokus utama, bagaimana pendugaan untuk climate dan stok hutan ya, sumber daya hutannya di sini. Gitu. Dan bagian kedua itu ada dengan biodiversity-nya, ya, kedudukan biodiversity. Ya.
All right, so here is sampling design part 1. So this is looking at the past. My idea is to integrate the past research that has been done. There's one particular study that I'll discuss in a little bit that I think is very promising. It's the study from the Storm project that had data from some years ago, and I think we really can get very interesting information from looking at these, what I call legacy plots. So you can see the map of where I live here, and the yellow plots are actually quite close to the location of the plots from the study that I had mentioned, so from 10 years ago. So if we can already go to these plots, we can already have information on changes that have happened over the past 10 years. There are some studies that go back even further. By working with this established plot design and this established, sampling design and everything like this, there's a lot of learning that can take place, right? So learning about how feasible was it? Is it a good design? By testing it, I and the people who I will work with can know, and we can improve it for the final design, so to say. So it's also important to connect this to climate variables if possible.
Ya, ini data yang bagian pertama ini dalam rancangan sampling ya, untuk melihat yang sudah. Nanti mungkin akan melihat lagi, mengunjungi lagi ya kelompok yang sudah dibuat untuk melihat lebih dari 16 tahun yang lalu. Ya. Ini yang kuning-kuning ini mungkin dulu sempat dibuat oleh proyek yang lain, misalnya Storma ya. Setidaknya mungkin koordinat sudah ada, ya data awal lama ada, sehingga nanti kita lihat sekarang seperti apa perkembangannya. Ya. Sehingga ini bisa meningkatkan bagaimana sistem monitoring permanen. Dan nanti jika memungkinkan ini dikoneksikan dengan variabel-variabel iklim. Ya. Oke. Did you find from Storma the yellow?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And find out the extra coordinate.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Part 2 is the present, so to say. This is really the core of the permanent sampling plots that we're trying to establish. Just want to put a quick note. So in the map, you can see these gray plus signs. This is just for illustration purposes, right? So in reality, we will not put a systematic grid through Learn and Do. In reality, we look to apply stratified random sampling. So we will try to use the existing zonation of the park, any forest type information, elevation bands, basically whatever we can use to get a good idea of where different areas in the park might be. So it's effectively this part 2 or present looks to establish the base system of permanent observation plots that will be visited on a regular basis. Now, whether that regular basis is annually or every 5 years or every 10 years, this will depend on the capacity and the budget that we have for the project.
Ya, ini di bagian kedua itu untuk yang mengetahui kondisi sekarang. Jadi nanti perlu dibangun ya sistem plot-plot permanen ya yang akan dikunjungi secara reguler. Nah, regulernya ini nanti ditentukan apakah per tahun, 2 tahun, 5 tahun misalkan, yang sangat tergantung pada budget juga ya. Nah, tapi dari segi katakan rancangan ya ini kemungkinan menerapkan penarikan contoh acak berlapis gitu ya, dan nanti ada stratifikasi ya, yang akan ditentukan kemudian apakah berdasarkan standar ketinggian gitu ya, atau zonasi yang sudah ada. Nah, kalau digambar ini hanya semacam ilustrasi saja. Nah, kenapa stratifikasi ini ya memang sangat efektif ya, begitu tidak ada semacam keragaman yang ya, kita bisa mengkelas-kelasan, dan ini akan sangat membantu nanti untuk bagaimana faktor-faktor itu bisa dinilai ya, kaitannya dengan biodiversitas berdasarkan strata-strata. Oke.
Oh, yes. There was one more point there, but also that stratification can also help with the climate variables. Okay, great. So now we have part 3, which is the future. The idea here is that we would plan in what I'm calling at this moment floater plots. As I kind of mentioned a few minutes ago, imagine that the field teams are going out to these permanent observation plots. And on the way, they see a part of the forest that is completely new and somehow was not captured in the stratification. So there's some area of the forest that is dry for some reason, or there's one area that is completely dominated by rattan or whatever, or they see a new species that they think might have never been discovered before. I think it's really important that with this permanent monitoring system, we plan for these types of moments for the field teams, right? That we plan budget, we plan resources, that when new species or new environments are found, they can be assessed. Of course, it's very important that these plots do not get mixed in with the rest, right? So it's important that these plots would not be statistically selected. In this case, there needs to be very, very strict data management to make sure that what is found in those plots can contribute to the biodiversity estimates and the estimates about the number of species, but not going into messing up the estimation design.
Ya, di bagian 3 ini untuk ke depan ini ya akan ada rancangan pot atau motor semacam pelampung ya, tapi maksudnya ada penambahan yang ditambahkan nanti setiap tahun gitu ya. Kalau misalkan ada strata-strata yang sudah ditentukan sebelumnya ya, pada tahap yang present tadi itu ternyata belum terwakili ya. Nah, sehingga nanti perlu menambahkan ya plot-plot gitu. Nah, tetapi memang nanti harus di data manajemennya jangan sampai apa istilahnya mix gitu ya, mengganggu kedugaannya. Tapi nanti keperluannya kalau ada misalkan ditemukan spesies yang baru, nah dari data plot itu nanti ada spesies penelitian tersendiri. Ya. Okay.
Another really interesting feature of this sort of part 3, the future, is that we can imagine and we can model some theoretical case where we could, over time, if this really would be a permanent monitoring system, and we were constantly every year adding 1 or 2 extra floater plots, just one time, to see if there are new species. You can see what happens when over time, over the years, we do more. Okay? So eventually, there is some theoretical point where we can assess the entire park. Now, it's a massive park. This would not happen in 10 years, 20 years. This would probably not happen in 1,000 years. I don't know. But it's interesting from a theoretical perspective.
Ya, kalau kita melakukan pada pembuatan plot tambahan dari per tahun, lama-lama nanti akan terkumpul ya plot yang lebih banyak, ya. Dan ini nanti akan menjadikan data bagaimana kita akan pakai dasar pemodelan ya. Untuk menilai ya berdaya ya hutan ada di situ. Okay.
Great. So that's it for the sampling design. I did just want to throw up some quick numbers on the STORMA report that I talked about. So yeah, this part of research was focused on plant biodiversity, so taxonomic diversity, species diversity, and functional diversity. There were a total of 13 plots from 700 meters to 2,400 meters, and they were assessed over 10 years ago, so 2011 and 2012. You can see the locations, the exact locations on the map, and yeah, so I think that this could be a great starting point for this first year. Instead of reinventing the wheel, go somewhere where it's been done and fix it and make it better from there.
Kind of pass, ya, depan desain. Jadi Mbak Mary menemukan memang di Storba dulu sempat ada ya beberapa plot dibuat 13 plot gitu ya, yang memiliki ketinggian dari 700 sampai 2.400. Ya. Nah di umur tahun 2011, 2012 ya sudah sekitar 10 tahunan lebih ya gitu. Nah sudah juga dipublikasi ini. Nah tapi memang data ini nanti bisa kita gunakan ya dan bisa konteks ya. Fabian ya,
Yeah,
ya itu
I
bisa.
yeah.
the rotation coordinate and also the base ya. Nah, ini yang nanti bisa digunakan ya, sebagai awal. Kita belum tahu apakah memang ada data di loading dulunya gitu ya, tapi kalau ada yang di kontingen ya, ada juga ya data ini. Ini bisa jadi semacam titik awal ya untuk kegiatan ini. Ya.
Okay, great. So we have the two components of forest resource monitoring left. We have plot design and we have estimation design. These will go much faster, I promise. Yeah, go ahead and click. Yeah, and mainly because I want to be very open in terms of this aspect. So I already mentioned that it's important to have a base design to get this sort of standard elements. So plant species composition, DBH, heights, and then basic climate variables. So yeah, this is sort of the base design.
Ya, ini adalah plot design.
Yeah. So from there, from this base design, in terms of the elements that we would add. So do we want to add a camera trap to each plot? Do we want to estimate NTFP yields in each plot? Do we want to compare the core zone to the forest edge? You know, these different elements of what could happen within each of those plots, which animals we assess, things like this, is all open to discussion.
Ya, ini dengan plot design ya, dan nanti harus dibuat suatu standar desain ya, standar base ya, base dasar ya, tangan dasar. Apakah nanti ya berupa plot bersama dengan ukuran tertentu ya, nested plot. Ya. Umumnya begini, nested ya, ini sangat efisien biasanya untuk komposisi jenis ya, komposisi jenis, apalagi banyak tingkatannya, semai, pantang, tiang ya, kalau semai kan bisa ribuan kalau kita ukur dalam plot yang luas kan, tapi cukup plotnya yang kecil. Nah, dan juga misalkan atribut-atribut dasar, meter, tinggi, jenis, dan juga buah-buah iklim, curah hujan, temperatur, ya, nanti diukur gitu. Nah, tetapi nanti rancangan dasar ini bisa dikembangkan lebih lanjut ya, berdasarkan apa, mungkin ada keperluan di Taman Nasional ya, kaitannya dengan ingin pengumpulan apa misalkan ya, dan juga kita sendiri konsorsium ini dan kedepannya harus seperti apa, mungkin ya, masyarakat lokal misalkan kaitannya dengan bagaimana biodiversity ya, lalu biodiversitas satwa ya, dari kamera trap misalkan yang di link masing-masing plot yang tadi kita diskusikan ya, juga untuk misalkan multiple price product ya, rotan. Nah, ini memang rotan juga jadi perhatian ya, di KLHK. Bu Menteri itu memang menugaskan ya dirjen inventarisasi untuk bagaimana ini inventarisasi multiple price product HBK. Dan juga bisa juga nanti kaitkan dengan karakteristik tanah.
Okay, so we're at the final piece, which is the estimation design. And I already mentioned this a little bit. So we have these two facets of the estimation design. We have climate and forest stock, so estimation of biomass, carbon stock, and we're getting this from the base plots, right? From this core grid with stratified random sampling. Then on the other side, we have estimation of biodiversity. So species richness, for example. And this information can come from all plots, whether they're statistically sampled or not. If a species is within Lorelindu, it is within Lorelindu. But again, just to say, this will require very careful data management.
Ya, ini kaitannya dengan yang bagian ketiga ya, rancangan pendugaannya, bagaimana menduga ya stok hutan atau klaim ini biomass dan cadangan karbon ya. Nah, ini mungkin dari plot-plot dasar tadi. Untuk biodiversitas ini bagaimana pendugaan biodiversitas akan kita ya jenis ya. Ini dari seluruh plot ya, termasuk tadi yang plot ya. Tapi di sini memang kita perlu hati-hati gitu ya dalam pengolahan datanya ya, agar misalkan tidak salah ya, analisis kita. selain kita berhadapan dengan banyaknya rancangan PON.
Yeah. Thank you. Cool. Okay, so we're on the last slide. Thank you so much for sticking through with me to the end. So to wrap it all up, what am I trying to accomplish by the end of the 3 years? The deliverables and the expected results that I have are this. So at the end of the PhD, I wanted to have this permanent biodiversity monitoring system. I wanted to work for the national park because this is really who would determine if this truly is a permanent system. So that being said, I will really be here as much as possible and work with you as much as possible so that this is something that you want and something that you were part of also creating. So the way that I have my design sort of brainstormed already gives us these three very clear options of what we can find after these 3 years. So first, we'll get a comparative analysis from revisiting these legacy plots. These are focused on tree diversity and already can tell us changes that happened over the past decade. And we can build from this. Next, we'll have a design and protocols for the network of permanent observation plots in the national park, the standards, gold standards. Then we will have the current state or the baseline of biodiversity in Laurel Landry National Park. And this can cover a wide range of factors, however we decide and whatever we want to create. So plants, animal biodiversity, soil and climate, NTFPs, everything that we discussed today. The possibilities are.
Ya. Jadi harapannya pada akhir S3 nanti selama 5 tahun ini akan ada sistem monitoring permanen di Laurel ini yang mencakup 3 hal ini ya. Jadi mungkin ada hasil dari analisis ya komparatif dari plot yang dulu ya, yang tadi misalnya gambar spot formal ya, tapi mungkin di sini hanya fokus pada keanekaragaman ya jenis ya pohon khususnya. Lalu nanti ada semacam rancangan dan juga protokol ini semacam apa panduan guideline ya, bagaimana observasi di plot permanen tadi ya di Laurel itu yang kita akan lakukan. Nah ini mungkin juga nanti bisa diteruskan oleh para pengelola Laurel itu ya setelah 3 tahun berakhir proyek ini. Nah lalu juga ada hasil bagaimana kondisi saat ini maka baseline ya dari biodiversitas di Laurel ini baik misalkan flora ya maupun fauna ya keragaman jenisnya dan juga mungkin faktor-faktor terkait kepada tanah dan juga iklim ya.
Thank you very much, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Ya, terima kasih untuk ya komentar ya silakan ya Pak Ferry akan sangat senang ya. Oke.
Terima kasih.
Ya. Thank you. Ya, silakan Pak. Yeah, you can speak in English.
Okay, thank you, sir. I want to use bahasa and English.
Okay.
Do you perform analysis of change in land use or land cover to in the future period, maybe 10 years next period or more?
Sure. Okay. The question was if we would do like land cover analysis. Sure. I think it's definitely within scope. I think this is a bit more on the remote sensing analysis. So I presented that with master thesis, which did this land use land cover change. In terms of stratifying the national park to create this stratified random sampling, these strata that we create should be fixed, right? So when you do stratified random sampling, it's important that the strata that you create, and if that's based on land use or forest type or something like that, it's important that these are fixed because when you do the estimation design, you take the plots that you have from that strata, and whatever information is in there, you kind of blow it up to the whole strata. So this is actually going to be quite a challenge, I think, because this will be a permanent system. Can we integrate forest type? Can we integrate land use when these things might change over time? So it's very interesting and definitely something I'll have to think about. I'm happy to hear any other contributions to that or ideas. How to build strata on a component that might change.
Ada lagi, Mas? Go ahead.
Was a question. Yeah. So it is quite usual that stratum boundaries are changing over time, but it is not necessarily a problem for estimation. We just need to define the strata, or let's say estimate the stratum area in every period. And this is also some kind of land use analysis at the end. So it will be part of it.
Thank you, Lutz, for answering the question. Yeah, thank you for the question. That's great.
Ada lagi? Silakan yang lain.
Untuk masukan.
Pada tahun sekitar 2012 itu ada program forest inventory dari kementerian, program UNRED itu telah melakukan juga inventarisasi di dalam kawasan. Terus pada tahun sekitar 2014 juga ada CRC, Collaborative Research Center from German, tentang penelitian seputaran kawasan Taman Nasional Lorelindo. Pada saat itu mungkin informasi data itu bisa juga digunakan sebagai data sebelumnya. Itu kalau yang CRC itu pada saat itu yang kelola Ibu Ayen. Ya, nanti informasi itu bisa digunakan sebagai informasi awal untuk data penelitian. Terima kasih.
Bapak dari mana, Ustaz?
Ya.
Ya. Untuk yang apa tadi UNT ikut terlibat?
Ikut terlibat.
Oh, tapi datanya gimana ya?
Dengan Ibu Ayen juga.
UNT. Oh, gitu. Nah, dulu seperti apa itunya? Buat plot gitu? Buat
plot, kita pengambilan data plot dari semai pancang tiang pohon, terus mendata pohon mati untuk carbon stock, terus mengambil data tanah juga, gitu, dengan beberapa kurang lebih kedalaman sampai 60 cm, gitu, dengan menggunakan ring tanah. Gitu.
Ukuran plotnya sampai berapa?
1 hektar datar. Jadi di lapangan bisa jadi 1,5 hektar. 1 hektar datar, Pak. Nah,
berapa plotnya totalnya?
Itu se-Sulawesi Tengah, jadi dia pakai sistematika sampling juga.
Yang tadi ini di itu.
Itu satu.
Ini satu.
Ada beberapa kan itu, Pak. Karena kita kan terbagi dari beberapa tim yang tersebar, tidak satu tim untuk semua, misalkan Taman Nasional, tapi terdistribusi di Taman Nasional itu ada beberapa.
Bu Ayen ya gitu ya. Tapi bukan CRC kayak.
Pada saat itu NFP dari Kementerian UNRED. Cuma pada tahun 2014 itu ada CRC turun, Pak. Dengan diorang Ibu Dewi, Ibu Ayen, penelitinya di lapangan itu Ibu Dewi, terus kalau tidak salah itu Pak Diki, Pak, apa itu, dari Jerman juga yang doktoral di sana, datang dengan siapa Robert.
Tapi isunya lebih ke masyarakat atau
ke masyarakat, gitu. Kalau yang CRC itu mereka masuk sampai kawasan-kawasan sekitar Taman Nasional ini.
Ya, baik. Yeah, he had some information, yeah, in 2012, yeah, I know actually, yeah. He said there was, let's say, inventory team, yeah, collaborative with Sun, yeah, established plot in Loremindo, but perhaps only one in Loremindo because it is kind of NFI under UNRED at the time, yeah, UNRED, so this is like a trial perhaps for a design, yeah. When have plot inside the window, I don't know we don't know the exact coordinate, yeah. We have to check. They measure all carbon food until the soil also, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Perhaps I don't know, yeah. Supported by FAO, yeah.
Maybe
Ministry, I know.
we will need
Yeah. Okay. And 2014. There was a CRC project here, yeah, but it's more on the social community. But interestingly, both of them, yeah, under Bu Ayen, yeah, coordinator. So it's better project by the powerful lady. Superwoman, yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Bu Ayen superwoman.
Yeah. Just to bounce off of that, thank you so much for the information. This is exactly some of the background information that I would like to have. So I mentioned the study from Storma of Fabian Gamba, just as one example that I know. But in cases like this, it's, yeah, exactly right. If there have been other past studies that have done a lot of work, we can revisit those.
Yeah.
We can try.
Ada lagi yang lain? Silakan. Kalau ada masukan. Tapi yang gini-gini mungkin database Mas di Loremindo ada ya? Silakan, pernah ada ya. Terima kasih.
Kalau di Loremindo sendiri,
Oke, terima kasih. Pertanyaan dulu mungkin Pak ya. Yang pertama, ini nanti plot permanennya lokasinya di mana? Pertama. Kemudian jumlahnya berapa? Terus kapan rencana untuk pelaksanaan kegiatan ini? Kalau tadi kan 3 tahun itu kan kurang informatif kalau dia dan 3 tahun itu kira kapan? Kemudian kalau untuk kegiatan seperti ini sebelumnya kami sudah laksanakan di tahun lalu 2020, yaitu perhitungan stok karbon. Itu timnya itu ada dari tenaga ahli dari P3 Septi, kemudian PJLHK dari Bogor, teman-teman dari sana. Data-datanya itu yang dikumpulkan sama, kurang lebih seperti yang disampaikan tadi, seresak, kemudian kulit pohon, kemudian kayu mati, sama tanah. Itu hasil labnya juga sudah ada, cuma dokumen akhirnya mungkin tahun ini keluar gitu. Nanti Mbak Mary boleh jalan-jalan ke kantor nanti bincang-bincang toh supaya ya. Informasi saja ya, informasi. Siapa tahu untuk data kami sudah melaksanakan kegiatan ini.
Ya, di Bogor siapa di Bogor? Siapa kontak person?
Ini Ibu dari P3 Septi, Ibu Nurul sama Pak Dr. Deden. Kalau dari PJLHK, Pak Anton dan Ibu Eka.
Nurul Litbangmut ya?
Litbangmut
ya. Ya.
Oke. Slide please. Ya, ada
Thank you.
Berapa plot dulu, Mas? Keterangannya? Ya. Ada berapa plot?
Kemarin kami itu 3 jalur, 1 jalur itu 5 plot, 1 plot ukurannya dia akan melingkar. Pakai radius kurang lebih 20 kali 20.
Oh, gitu.
Ya.
20. Ya.
Oke, terima kasih.
Ya,
Lokasinya di Tambing. Mungkin kemarin waktu ke Tambing sudah lihat barangkali.
Kemarin sih sempat dibilangin aja, cuma lokasinya dia agak lupa karena ikut Pak Desa. Pak Desa dia, nah itu.
Tapi 20 plot.
Yeah, first the question from National Review. Yeah, you said about the inventory. Where is the location? Yeah, are you going to be sure? What is the number of sample plot? Yeah, when you will conduct the inventory? It is not clear from your presentation. And then he adds some information that last year, yeah, National Review collaborate with researcher from Bogor, yeah, Forest Research Agency, yeah, for that, yeah, conduct inventory, carbon inventory, yeah, 20 plot set, yeah, over there. The data already there, but still in the reporting, no, yeah, pada saat reporting, yeah, perhaps in coming week, yeah, the report will be available, yeah. I think we can contact later on, yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah.
I think I can. Can you hear me? We learned already about these 20 blocks.
Yeah.
And the question the question would be whether these plots are permanently marked so that you can find them again easily.
Yeah.
Because it would be so interesting to do the remeasurements maybe this year and next year and maybe in 5 years also. So finding them again and doing measurements exactly on the same plot to infer about changes. That would be very interesting.
Yeah. Plotnya ditandai nggak ada? Ada ya. Oh, itu permanen plot. Yeah.
Have you ever tried to find them again? It's easy to find. Yeah. May I ask how you selected the position of these plots? How were they selected?
Bagaimana sebarannya? Apakah didesain sistematis atau hanya jalur? Oh, it's only in certain track, yeah, and it's systematic. Not cover all the area.
No, most of
yeah,
20 blocks.
Yeah, berapa? For line, for
lines with 5.
Yeah, it's kind of like parsec.
And these strips of this is a cluster of 5
Yeah.
subplots, so to say.
Yeah.
And this is close together or in very far distance.
Yeah, yeah. From one plot. Oh, 15 meter only. Oh, 50 meter between plot, plot.
50.
Yeah, 50 one plot.
Go to the next one.
Yeah. And that for the jalur, jalur. Yes. Satu jalur, 5 plot. Ada 4 jalur. Oh, udah ada plot? Oh. So from line to line around 100, but from plot and then to the plot it is 50. Yeah, more than 100 meter among the line, among parsec.
You have the map of the position of these plots. Okay. Maybe you could make well available and send it to Mary.
Yeah, we can find out. Yeah.
And
You can
Okay.
make the data
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
You can make after it.
Yeah. He suggest to visit his office. Yeah, that's an foreign.
I have a last question about that because it would be just such a nice topic for a master thesis.
Yeah.
To do the remeasurements and then estimating changes or also estimating carbon with different approaches.
Yeah.
Because we know that there is a lot of uncertainty in carbon estimation.
Yeah.
And depending on the approach you choose, you might have different scores of 10, 20, 30%.
Yeah.
And that might be interesting. How much time did it take to make the measurements on these 20 subplots?
Berapa waktu?
More or less. A week altogether, or a month, or a year?
Satu kali saja, belum pernah ada diukur. Ya, menyelesaikan pengukuran dalam tadi 20 prosesnya baru 1 kali diukur. Iya, belum pernah diulang. Belum. Yang ditanyakan berapa lama? 1 week. Yeah. Very long.
1 week altogether, including the walking times and everything. 1 week.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ya. Tapi mereka rencana ada mau pulang nggak?
Belum.
Mana? Belum.
Belum.
Ya. Siapa Nurul Silva itu kan? Nah, I know the lady. Ya. I know the researcher. Ya. From
Nanti sama aku dari siapa?
Hello, testing. Okay, I would like to answer the questions that you have. Okay. So the first question was, when will I do this? Okay, so there's a few pieces to the answer to that. And the first is that I need to get my research permit. So in terms of when I can start getting into the field, it's going to be as soon as possible, but I would guess that we need a few months to get the research permit approved. But I'll be here as soon as possible. Also, if you remember, when I went through my timeline, I kind of had this first phase, which was learning, right? So for this whole first year, my plan is to join you. Join you, see what you're already doing, learn about projects that are going on, sample plots that already exist, go into the forest, try out some plots from the past, and just get an idea of how long it takes to assess a plot. How long does it take to hike to a plot? How long does it take, all of these logistical things. So that's really my goal for the first year. The second year is to test out some early ideas. So hopefully together we can build an idea of a number of plots, plot design, and then we can go test that out. Maybe a few different options, and we optimize. We pick our favorites. So the question of how many plots and where they're going to be, this will come later. This will be kind of what we develop together from learning, from testing, and trying it out.
Ya, tapi ya, saya terjemahin ya.
Pak, ya, the state.
Ya, pokoknya nanti dalam seminggu ini akan menguntit katanya Mas ini kali ya karena ya belajar apa yang sudah dilakukan ya, tidak yang ada berapa jumlahnya sebarangnya jangan kemudian. Nanti memang bagus nanti kalau misalkan ada data di luar itu yang memetakan misalkan lokasi koordinat yang sudah ada di mana saja dengan pos ya informasi itu ya.
Ada yang kemarin ada koordinat.
Ya. Ya, any others? Ada lagi yang lain? Question? Enough? Ya.
In the morning, we were also talking about the camera traps. What would be interesting for Mary also to have a map with the positions or the coordinates of these maps and of these camera traps. And one the link mobile phone to the database, or do you need to go to the cameras and take out the memory stick? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so they are also, let's say, easily reachable. Yeah. The next question about the protocol of these camera traps would also be how did you select the location? Because that might also be an important thing to know for Mary.
Ya, mungkin nanti kami perlu macam lokasi kamera trap, Mas ya. Gitu. Dulu dibuatnya itu dan di mana apa barangnya? Apa kursi masyarakat, Mas. Oh, ya, it is located to positive because on the information from the community. Ya, from this space here, I would expect. Ya. Otherwise, systematic will not capture. Ada lagi yang lain? Cukup ya. Very good, say something.
Just thank you. This has really been an incredible experience. I couldn't have imagined this going better, and I couldn't be more excited for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
I hope you're excited too. Yeah, I want to just charge into the forest right now, but a little patience can go a long way.
Ya.
Kalau ada lagi apa? Ya, yes. Ada tapi kita batas aja dengan lulus ya.
Mandi dong kan?
Ya,
Mandi.
saya tidak harus ya harus dengan proyek itu aja. Ya,
Oh, besok itu.
yeah. So I think the session already finished ya by now ya. Jadi Bapak Ibu untuk sesi kedua ini kita sudah selesai. Intinya memang tadi ingin mendengarkan seperti apa paparan rencana risetnya dan juga memberikan masukan. Nah nanti kami ada sesi tambahan ini khusus untuk FP3 juga Taman Nasional ya untuk data sharing gitu. Tadi dengan Pak Anom ya. Pak Anom jam 3-an katanya karena mereka sekarang menghadiri meeting yang lain ya. But for most audience ya mungkin already close for today. We will meet tomorrow ya for training. Jadi ini nanti technical training ya. Bagaimana misalkan menggunakan open access software ya, open source data gitu. Dan ini menarik bagi rekan-rekan ya yang memang bergelut dengan data. Jadi besok mohon kehadiran lagi jam 9 ya, 9. Data yang sudah saya sampaikan tadi kalau belum di copy bisa dilanjutkan. So we close for this second session ya. But for this from consultant of FF3 and National Park where we have additional session for data sharing right now. I think 3-4:30 ya, because some others still meeting for them. Yeah. For all of you, yeah, before you leave, yeah, please take some coffee over there. Jadi ada coffee break, ya. Ya, untuk Pak Adam khusus ada coffee break, Pak Adam.
Ya. Coffee and
rokok.
cigarette.
Oh, cigarette, okay, ya, cigarette. Thank you very much, ya. Give applause for us, ya. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu yang online ya. Mohon maaf kopinya tidak bisa dikirim ke sana.
Nanti di GoFood.
Besok ya mohon kehadirannya juga ya yang tertarik kepada trainingnya secara teknikal ya. Bagaimana mengoperasikan misalkan QG lalu juga mendownload ya dengan GEA ya Google Engine ya. Nah, mungkin ini akan sangat bermanfaat nantinya. Untuk kali ini kita tutup sampai di sini. Terima kasih. Not exactly translation, it's like summary. Yeah. Not good by more. Yeah. And elaborate.
Buka aja di pintunya. Nanti saya nanti tidak dapat duit.
During pandemic,
Mary, it's your coffee. Without sugar. No sugar. All sugar.
Tapi awal ini